Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to mismapasion, and we're back like we never left as a stretched out Game Week 16 graced our collective conscience over this past week and a half. And in case you hadn't been able to keep up with all the action, then you're in luck, because this video, as you're already aware by now, will recap all of the action that took place. So without any further ramblings, let's get right into it. The week's action started off with Chelsea welcoming Leicester in a game that was as predictable as they come. The Blues were looking to get back to winning ways after their calamitous and nail-biting draw against Brighton over the past weekend, and that is just what they did as Macario, Beaver Jones and Cuthbert rounded off the scoring in a game where the champions were worth every ounce of their pedigree. To their credit, Leicester did not fold nor crumble under the pressure of Chelsea, as the Foxes did put in a decent account of themselves, especially when viewing the consolation goal scored by Momiki, which was superb, might I say. But their lack of quality in comparison to Chelsea's did prove to be the difference maker, as the Blues' craft was just on another level. The next game on the same night was a bit more competitive despite the differing gulfs in quality, as West Ham welcomed Manchester City, with the Hammers of course reeling off the back of their 7-goal slobber knocker against Arsenal, which unfortunately they did not come out the victors, and City not entirely at their best if their performance against Spurs was anything to go by. As is customary by now, City were on top of the early proceedings, but West Ham were not going to be easy pushovers, as the home team gave City a fair few headaches themselves, but neither team could find the opener just yet, with Yamashita and Shemek being kept active in the first half. Some sweeping changes in the second half finally saw some action in relation to goal scoring, as the final 15 minutes of the game saw both sides really go for it, and it would be Bunny Shaw who would open the scoring the 80th minute, and I must say that was genuinely deserved goal, as she had just been an intense threat right away and her goal was well deserved. The same though could not have been said of City deserving the result, at least if you go off what Manuela Pavi had to say, as she would snatch victory away from the citizens with a difficult strike from a tight angle stoppage time to grab a point for the Hammer side in what was a result that was arguably well earned for both sides considering the performance on the day. But City though will be the most unsatisfied of the two teams, as they have lost a little bit more of ground after the aforementioned week and a half cup-induced break, with the next round of the FA Cup having to be played over the weekend. The WSL finally returned on Friday night, with two of the main chasing packs in Arsenal and Manchester United kicking things off for the remainder of the game week. Beginning with Arsenal, and the Gunners were coming off the back of a shell-shock loss to Liverpool in the FA Cup and were looking to get back in form ahead of a busy schedule, but that was going to be much easier said than done, as they came up against Everton, who themselves weren't doing too badly all things considered. To the match itself, and Arsenal were on top in the early goings, with Everton barely getting a look in, and the early dominance from the visiting Arsenal yielded dividends just after the halfway point of the first 45, with a great first-time try from Melissa Russo to get the Gunners in the lead. The joy would not be felt for too long by Arsenal, as Everton would soon draw level after a deflected shot from Schnoiz against the run of play wound up in the waiting arms of Tony Payne, who made no mistake and capitalized. The second half provided more of the same as the first, with Arsenal dominating on the ball, whereas Everton were happy to keep the Gunners at bay and camp in their box, in and around that area of course. It would prove to be some key changes from the bench by Renee Slagers that managed to shift the game back into Arsenal's favor firmly, as literally on her first touch, substitute Caitlin Ford put the ball into the back of the net to restore the lead for the visitors. And Arsenal were anything but done, as the likes of Ford and McCabe would hit the woodwork in a short space of time to just almost double the score, before Russo would finally step up again towards the end of the 90 to put the game to bed after coolly skipping past Brosnan to see Arsenal successfully claim all 3 points in a good display for the Gunners, who are more than worthy winners, especially when looking at the quality of chances they carved out throughout the entirety of the match, especially the second half. Whereas for Everton, they were far from their best and were really running around for the entire game chasing shadows, and hopefully they can turn things around sooner much rather than later, because their quality is undeniable, but a little bit of oomph is needed on their part to get things rolling in the right direction once again. The second Friday night clash was a fairly big encounter, as Liverpool welcomed regional rivals Manchester United to Anfield for the first time ever in Liverpool's history, mind you, with a routine win being on the cards for United based off their current form alone. But in life and in football, nothing comes guaranteed, and United would find this out very soon, as despite a very good start from the Red Devils, which includes some very close attempts from George, Bizet, and a rocket of an attempt from Clinton, the Reds would not budge from their defensive duties, with Rachel Laws in particular really an element in between the sticks. With some great work at the back, all that was left for the home side was the same panache up front, and who better and who else but Olivia Smith to be the one to provide that spark, as a solo charge from out wide to the center saw her fire off and beat the hands of Tullis Joyce to open the scoring. Liverpool's joy would continue as Fuka Nagano would score an audacious golazo with a one-time shot that went over the head of Tullis Joyce to float into the back of the net to send the crowd into a groundswell celebration as the Reds went into the second half leading. United were out to lunch in the second half, and they had yet to have recovered from the pasting Liverpool were dealing with them thus far. And the misery only piled on for the Devils as they gave away a penalty, which, you guessed it, Smith tucked away with a vicious effort to grab the third goal for her team, and undeniably the 3 points as Liverpool played United off the pitch in what was a really excellent showing from the Reds in their debut at Anfield, as everything just went right for them, from the defensive solidity to the attacking potency, and the crowd were up for every single bit of it as they lapped up every ounce of the action. Despite getting a consolation, Man United were brought crashing down to earth in this game, which resulted in their first loss of the year, and did also cause them to lose ground on Chelsea in addition to ceding their position in the table to Arsenal in yet another triple whammy of a result that they will be reeling from until the next game week, where they will hopefully look to recover and get back to winning ways. Sunday saw the final 2 matches play out between Crystal Palace versus Aston Villa and Tottenham versus Brighton and Hove Albion. I don't dwell too much when it comes to Aston Villa, because if you've been following my channel even for just the last 2 weeks, you'll know what I'm going to say, as Villa got utterly dog-walked by Crystal Palace in a game where the home side showed their grit with a dominant 3-1 victory over a hapless Villa who dominated the game themselves, ironically enough, but the Eagles showed more effectiveness where it mattered most, with Nuven, Veerden and Stengel all finding the back of the net, with Veerden's goal in particular being sensational by all accounts, with a sliver of hope dangling in front of Palace in the final few weeks of the WSL campaign, gearing up to be a fight for survival for the South London outfit, whereas Stengel's goal in particular, I think this just it exemplified the calamity at Aston Villa, because the goalkeeper was halfway across the pitch and Stengel just had one job and she did it. She scored into an empty net. The Villa defenders were nowhere to be found. The keeper, again, she was on walkabout, and at this rate Aston Villa just needs to go down and reset, because for all the quality that they have on paper, they have been underwhelming for too long now, and I think a massive and major reset is needed for them, because it's becoming a little bit embarrassing now, personally speaking. The final encounter saw Spurs welcoming Brighton, with both teams in not quite the best of form, with neither having seen a win for at least 4 and 8 games respectively, so both sides definitely had some motivation coming into this match. For all intents and purposes, the match was quite even, but Brighton were the more poised of the two teams, with the Seagulls regularly peppering the Spurs goal with the Lily Whites having next to no countermeasure to it at all. Brighton's pressure and relentlessness eventually paid off towards the end of the first half, as Frank Kirby would fire home the opener to give the visitors the deserving lead. The second half did not have much to write home about, as Spurs just could not step it up to an extra gear, with the Seagulls tactically outmaneuvering them to see out a tidy 1-0 victory to finally break their duck. It was a great game that finally went the way of Brighton, who did just about everything right to navigate their way to win, whereas Tottenham are still in a major freefall that, if they do not arrest it soon, they might just find themselves flirting relegation with 6 games to go. And speaking of relegation, the current WSL table has seen some movements across the board, with Arsenal now moving ahead of Manchester United on goal difference after the differing fortunes for both clubs over the weekend. Whereas the relegation battle rages on, with Aston Villa losing a lot of ground in their survival bid, as they're only just 1 point away from taking bottom spot. So definitely there is still all to play for when it comes to survival if you are either Villa, Palace, Leicester or West Ham. Now, what did you think of the games played over this last week and a half? And who do you think will survive the drop come the end of the season? Leave your thoughts on this and anything else in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.